So the vision has evolved over time. When we started Aura House a little over 2 years ago, the original vision was to create a space for creatives and artists to come together and create. We wanted to combine hospitality with utility, sort of like a Soho house, but for artists. One of my personal beliefs is that message is tied to purpose. And I think we all have a vested interest in making sure that our personal message or whatever message we're trying to get out there lasts as long as possible after we're gone. So when we talk about amplifying human voices, we're talking about scale. We want to help people, human people, get their message out there for it to last as long as possible.
You went to Georgetown Law School, one of the most prestigious and very good law schools in the United States. How was that journey?
Halfway through college, when it was time to graduate, and I got that external stimulus of, dude, you got to do something next. I finally got my act together, and then, I made sure to get straight A's from then on. And I ended up getting an internship at the White House in my senior year.
Wow.
So I interned for the Barack administration.
My goodness.
Yeah, in the executive office of the president. And I noticed that everyone at the White House had a law degree, even though most of them, or none of them, were practicing law. They were in government, right? And Barack was a lawyer, Michelle was a lawyer, and the people in my actual office that I worked with, they were also lawyers. So I saw law school as an opportunity to keep my options open. I'm also an attorney, and I started my legal career in Silicon Valley. So my background is with working with tech startups and massive tech companies and in the venture capital space. And a lot of my philosophies about business building come from some of the greats of that space. So for example, when it comes to design and taste and the importance of that and vision, I draw a lot of that from Steve Jobs. He's famous for injecting design into the DNA of Apple and having that be a major market differentiator for the product.
We've seen so many things that lack innovation go down and under, like Blockbuster or like Nokia or MySpace. I'm old enough to remember MySpace, you know what I'm saying? Innovation is very important to continue moving forward. With your experience, Silicon Valley and all that, what are ways that you're implementing innovation to continue to stay ahead of the trends? Insights you need today to seize the world tomorrow. We're still in the Golden State, the city of angels. I'm sure you've all noticed the amazing scenery and the amazing studio that we've been in. We saved the best for last. We have an amazing guest. An impeccable and amazing resume as well. He is actually the CEO and the founder of Aura House, which is these studios that you've been seeing in these past few interviews at the same time. He's also in the general counsel of Aero Technologies. We're going to dive into that. And an important thing, he's also an attorney. He's a graduate from Georgetown Law School. So without further ado, our amazing guest, the man, the myth, the very legend himself, Khiree Walker.
I'm gonna have to pay you good for that introduction, man. I appreciate it. I'm humbled, man. Thank you for the invitation to be here. I'm excited for the conversation.
No, I actually want to dive in just straight in these studios. I want to tell you my experience. I don't know if you've seen a bit of my podcast, but I've traveled most of the country. I've done interviews. I'm based in Salt Lake City. We have our own down there.
Okay.
But I've done in Utah, Idaho. I've done in San Francisco. I've done Miami. I did almost every big metro except New York, but we've never seen studios like these.
That's what we like to hear. That's what we love to hear. That's what we love to hear.
I want to know the vision behind all of this.
Okay, yeah, absolutely. So the vision has evolved over time. When we started Aura House a little over 2 years ago, the original vision was to create a space for creatives and artists to come together and create. We wanted to combine hospitality with utility, sort of like a Soho house, but for artists and with actual spaces for them to create. As the vision evolved over time, it became more about production. And now we have what I call a production as a product type model. So it's more about the utility, but we still have the DNA of creating the space that people enjoy being in. And so you asked about our vision.
Exactly.
So our vision now has evolved to, we want to elevate, amplify, and preserve human voices.
All right.
And when I say elevate, what I'm talking about is the quality, right? We want the way you look and the way you sound to be top notch. And we want to do that so that there's alignment with your message, so that where you want it to land, it lands, and the way you want it to land, it lands. So that's what we mean by elevate. We want to elevate the product itself, right? And then when I talk about amplification, we're talking about scale. One of my personal beliefs is that message is tied to purpose. And I think we all have a vested interest in making sure that our personal message or whatever message we're trying to get out there lasts as long as possible after we're gone. So when we talk about amplifying human voices, we're talking about scale. We want to help people, human people, get their message out there and for it to last as long as possible. And then the last piece of the vision is to preserve human voices. One of the theses that we have is that as AI becomes more and more sophisticated, extemporaneous expression from humans will become more and more valuable, but also more rare because it'll be less efficient. As an artist myself, I feel personally threatened by how good AI is at creative pursuits, at creative things. You know, I'm a person who, my first talent, the first thing that made me feel special was the fact that I was a good writer of songs, of rap. I had a decent voice. You know, my father was an artist. My grandfather was an artist.
Good-looking guy. You forgot to add that
I
part
appreciate
right there.
that, man. Thank you. I wanted somebody to notice. You know what I mean? So I was waiting for somebody to notice.
Keep the compliments coming,
Keep the
KG.
compliments, man. Keep the compliments coming. So when AI started to get good, you know, a lot of us artists who were considered talented, and you know, I know that sounds arrogant, but a lot of us kind of took the position like, oh, this is cool, but it'll never do what real artists do. There's a certain level of creativity, of human expression that we just kind of didn't believe AI would capture. But very quickly, we saw that with enough prep time, AI can create on a level that's indistinguishable from humans. So the thesis is that the value will be the type of expression and creation that does not have that prep time. So when we actually see humans expressing themselves and spreading their message. And that's probably the biggest component of the vision for Aura House. We want to elevate, we want to amplify, and we want to preserve human voices.
Awesome, man. And I just loved as well, I think you guys have the perfect location. I think one of the locations that we did in the previous interviews were the one right next to Crypto.com Arena and like all the beautiful skyscrapers around downtown Los Angeles. Was that always the vision as well? Did you always like paint that in your head and like say, listen, this is the location I wanted, or was it just something that this came about because of the vision that you had for yourself?
No, absolutely. Part of it is a convergence of all of the different sort of components of me, like the things that are important to me. So I talked about how I was an artist, and you know that was probably my first passion. I'm also an attorney, and I started my legal career in Silicon Valley. So my background is with working with tech startups and massive tech companies and in the venture capital space. And a lot of my philosophies about business building come from some of the greats of that space. So for example, when it comes to design and taste and the importance of that and vision, you know, I draw a lot of that from Steve Jobs. You know, he's famous for injecting design into the DNA of Apple and having that be a major market differentiator for the product because it speaks to the soul and emotion of the consumer. And that's sort of how we want people to feel about Aura House. One of the things we like is that when people step into one of our studios, they're blown away. There's an immediate sort of impact, there's an immediate sort of aura that the space has. And some of that has to do with the view, some of it has to do with the interior design, some of it has to do with just taste and creativity in general that, you know, our team is able to sort of execute and replicate. But absolutely, that's a part of the original vision. And I can't take, you know, complete credit for it. One of the sort of superpowers is that my partner in this business is my wife. And, you know, we work extremely well together on every level. And one of those levels is the creativity and design. You know, we come up with ideas together and we iterate on those ideas together. Sometimes I'm the origin of an idea and then she makes it better. Sometimes she's the origin of an idea and then I make it better.
I love that. And so one of the things I think you and I spoke about it before we started the podcast is even though I was interviewing a lot of the guests out here, majority of them already have their own podcast. They have a big brand. They're already doing whatever they're doing. But each of them just had this certain feeling the minute they walked in when they started seeing just the setting as well. one of the guys I interviewed yesterday has traveled as far as Romania interviewing people. He's done like the UK. He's got a big platform. And him and his cousin came in the studio, and all they did was just take pictures like, whoa, what is going on over here?
We love that.
And that's when you know that something is going right, when people that are in the space, have done it for a while, are professionals and have seen so much, but still end up feeling that level of experience.
Yes.
And I think that's what sets apart like the top 1% is experience. It's just very unique, and also like the vision that you have, and you know, when you spoke about the Steve Jobs and implementing like as an artist, everything just comes down to like how you end up perceiving your form of like perfection, right? Would you agree? And which I want to add again. Actually, I want to talk a bit about like you, like
Okay.
you obviously you're an attorney, you have a legal background, and you're also in a general board of a company and doing this as well. How do you end up balancing everything on a day-to-day basis?
So there's a couple of answers to that one. So one thing I'll tell you is something that I've actually never said publicly. People who know me know this about me and have always known this about me for as long as I've known it. But I am high-functioning ADHD, right? So, and this is something that I've always known about myself, even without the label. And then the label became very clear in the past, 5 or 6 years. But what that has meant for the experience of my life is that I've always been in a constant engagement and relationship with what feel to me like an extremely large number of variables. And sort of the task of my life has been finding a way to balance those variables so that I'm not overwhelmed by them and sucked into the abyss. And what that has afforded me is, some challenges, but also some incredibly fulfilling opportunities to balance my life in a way that checks a lot of the boxes that fulfill me. And that to some people who haven't had that same relationship with these variables that I'm talking about may seem, it might seem impossible or hard to understand. But for me, it's just another iteration of balancing those variables. Okay. But, then that's sort of a broad, sort of a non-answer answer. But the other sort of practical answer is, one of the ways I've been lucky enough to balance those variables is that, God has blessed me with an excellent partner. None of this would be possible without my wife being my partner in the business and in everything that we do. I've built businesses before. I've had partners before. Some of those businesses have been semi-successful. Some of them have, burnt out over time. I've never had a partnership that has been able to work as well as this. And that's probably the biggest secret sauce of being able to balance, practicing law, being CEO of this business, and still having, some semblance of a life,
I love that. I can see Adrian blushing from about 10 miles away. No, I love that. And I couldn't stress so much on that. And I've seen some of the best business leaders, even some of the people I look up to, the Alex Hermosis and Layla Hermosi. I've seen people that are like well in tuned, all performing their role because it all just works well when everyone knows what they're doing and adding their value as well, and especially in a marriage and a relationship as well. So kudos to you, man. I love that. I love that example. So
thank you, man.
I want to touch as well. You went to Georgetown Law School, one of the most prestigious and very good law schools in the United States. How was that journey? Because it's a competitive law school. It's hard to get into and all that. Can you just run us through that experience and that journey for you, please?
Absolutely. Georgetown is a great school. I had a blast there. The choice to go to Georgetown was more about being in D.C. I, love D.C. I spent, my entire law school career there. And the time was just an excellent time to be in D.C. I went to undergrad to a school called Hampton University, which is in Southern Virginia. And a lot of people who finish up at Hampton in undergrad, they migrate to D.C. For one reason or another. So it ends up just being this amazing place if you are, Black, professional, ambitious, in your mid-20s. It just ends up being this incredible place.
Is Howard in D.C. as well?
Howard is also in D.C. And Howard is actually the rival school of Hampton, which I went to. So they call themselves the real HU and we call ourselves the real HU. So I wanted to be in D.C. But what wasn't clear to me when I was graduating college, or right when I was in my senior year, it wasn't clear to me that I wanted to be a lawyer in general. It wasn't exactly clear to me what I wanted to do in general. Prior to college, I had a public speaking and community problem solving career where I traveled the world teaching different communities around the world, community problem solving models and logic models to address violence and drug abuse and, youth delinquency issues in communities around the world. I did some work with the United Nations, and it all sprung from early local political things and community problem solving things that I was doing in my own community. And that journey led me to a place where I found myself at the end of undergrad, and I didn't know exactly what I wanted to do next. And I had actually been and this goes back to the ADHD point, I had actually been in this weird dynamic where I was doing all of these sort of amazing things professionally in the world, but I didn't care about school. So I had terrible grades leading into my junior year of college. I just couldn't care enough to focus. And the only things I really focused on were things that stimulated me and that excited me, and that was traveling the world, teaching community problem solving. I saw that as the stuff that mattered and school as the stuff that didn't. That changed, and halfway through college when it was time to graduate and I got that external stimulus of, dude, you got to do something next. I finally got my act together, and then, I made sure to get straight A's from then on, and I ended up getting an internship at the White House in my senior year.
Wow.
So I interned for the Barack administration.
My goodness.
Yeah, in the executive office of the president. And I noticed that everyone at the White House had a law degree, even though most of them or none of them were practicing law. They were in government, right? And Barack was a lawyer, Michelle was a lawyer, and then the people in my actual office that I worked with, they were also lawyers. So I saw law school as an opportunity to keep my options open while still doing something that was respected and would also continue to pour into me. Because the other thing that I recognized was that I was still unstructured intellectually. I knew that I could use some additional discipline when it came to writing. I knew that there was some additional rigor in terms of the way that I thought about problem solving that I could use. I was still just using my intellectual horsepower and my creativity to push me through, and I wanted to be more structured. So I saw law school as sort of like a dojo or like an opportunity to get like an intellectual black belt and take my brain and shape it into a way that I could point it at something and, start to predict the ultimate path that I would be on. I didn't know whether I wanted to go to a big law firm or whether I wanted to be in public interest. So I tried a lot of different things. And initially I thought I wanted to be in the public defender's office. So I tried that. And then I realized, I think I want to push the Black economic vanguard forward. And to do that, there's a certain kind of access and a certain kind of power that will be useful. So I decided to pivot and go into big law. And that's how I eventually ended up in Silicon Valley, representing big tech companies and VC funds. And I represent a lot of the Black-led and Black-owned VC funds and Black tech startups. And I did that for 6 years. I said I was going to do 5, but I did 6. And then I wanted to come in-house, so that's what I did.
Oh, that's so powerful, man.
Long story long.
Give the people what they want. No, so originally, obviously, I'm from South Africa. My dad actually is also an attorney. He's done it for like 26 years, has his own law firm down there, but he does mine health and safety, environmental law, labor law, all these different stuff because he's worked in the mines before then. In fact, his story was different where he worked in the mines and the way to get out of that was just get into law school. And so he used to study and do like night classes as well.
That's incredible.
And so he's like a role model for me, someone that looked up to it a lot. So
that's incredible. So mine health and safety, labor law, and environmental law.
Yes.
Oh man, that's a perfect convergence.
Yeah.
What a story.
And so that's why I want to kind of ask about American law because our perspective of law, I watch Suits. So I see Harvey Specter and I see Mike Ross and
Suits is one of the things that got me through law school. Suits and Scandal.
Yes, my dad's my parents love Scandal, my sister as well. I was more in the Suits thing because it was just something, drama and all that kind of stuff. But so I know that it's more of a graduate program in the United States, right? Because in South Africa, you can do a BCom where it's like you do an undergrad and then 2 years is added to make it 5 years, or you can do a straight LLB, which is like a 4-year degree and then you do 2 years where you serve articles in a way where you kind of get the experience of working at a law firm, and then you can only graduate and start like practicing law. What's the procedure in the United States?
So American and I think UK law is like this as well.
Okay.
It's one of the more strict pathways to becoming a lawyer. Yes, it's a graduate program. So you have to finish undergrad first. You have to finish 4 years of undergrad. And then traditionally, there are 3 years of law school. And usually in your second or third year, you start to do experiential programs where you go and you can actually practice under the mentorship of a law firm or another attorney, whether it be. So usually if you're going to go the law firm route, you'll be like a summer associate at some big law firm that you want to work at. And
Pierce
then
Inspector Lit.
Exactly. Pierce Inspector Lit, if you're on Suits. And so you've seen the summer associates. Yeah. And then they decide whether they want to hire you at the end. And then you join that firm, and then you become, when you graduate, you become a baby lawyer in your first year, and then you either stay there or you go on and do other things. But yes, it's a graduate program. It's not technically a doctoral program, but that's probably the thing to compare it to, because what you get is called a JD, a Juris Doctor.
I noticed that, yeah.
So you become a Juris Doctor, and then to practice law in most states, you also have to become licensed, which you have to take the bar to do. So you take the bar exam, and then you become a barred attorney, and then you become, so that little ESQ at the end of someone's name, that means they're licensed to practice law. They're a barred attorney. It stands for Esquire. But if they just have JD at the end, it just means they've graduated law school and they've gotten their law degree.
That makes sense. Because I always see that in between people, JD, or you end. Is it JD Vance? Is the similar? Or is that is his name?
I think that's his name. I think JD. Yeah, because the JD would come. It would come after the name.
Okay.
So it would be Vance, whatever his last name is, comma JD.
Okay.
And the JD stands for Juris Doctor.
Okay. Yeah. No, and I noticed that as well. And so with the bar exam, I think every state's got different bars, right? Would you have the bar for California?
Yeah. So
I heard it's one of the hardest one to get into. Or...
Yeah, the California bar exam is one of the hardest tests in the world. Not just hardest bar exam, but it's one of the hardest tests in the world. But every state has a bar exam. Some states have reciprocity, meaning if you get barred in this state, you can do some paperwork and they'll honor your license in another state. Some states participate in what's called the UBE, the Uniform Bar Exam, where you can take this one bar exam and get multiple licenses. But California is known and has been known for a very long time to have the most difficult bar exam. When I first graduated law school, so I'm from Connecticut originally. So when I first graduated, I got barred in Connecticut, and then I came and took the California bar as well.
And you have to do it again when you move a state, right?
When you go to a new state, yeah. You can't practice in that state without getting licensed in that state. And that's just a creature of, federalism. All the states are sovereign under the Constitution.
And a bar, is it a written thing, or is it like an in-person, or is it both? Or
so it's a written test. Okay. So it's been a while. So I've been practicing for going on 10 years. So some of these details are a little bit fuzzy, but it's like 6 hours. There's a multiple choice component. There's a written essay component, and then there's another component where they give you like a lawyering style hypothetical, and you have to basically, it's written also, but it's almost like an activity where you're a specific kind of lawyer, and there's a specific type of writing that you have to create, and that's like the third component of the bar exam.
Okay, no, I love that. Yeah, I had to ask that because we always hear this when I don't have any experience of seeing it firsthand, but I always hear about the bar, hear about all the different stuff, we hear about a graduate program. So I'm like, gosh dang, it's almost like 10 years before somebody starts practicing.
Yeah,
so it's probably such
4
a hard
years
process.
Undergrad, 3 years of law school.
Wow.
And then you graduate law school, you get your degree, then you take the bar exam, and then you start practicing.
That obviously explains why they get paid so much when they start practicing, because all the years you've put in as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So being a lawyer, depending on the type of lawyer you are, is one of the ways to get the highest straight out of school salary that you can get. Okay. The other ways are like investment banker.
Or engineering, software engineering kind of thing.
Yeah, software engineers are comparable, but the difference with software engineering is that a lot of it is merit-based on the value of that software engineer going into whatever, big tech company that they're joining. Whereas with law, it's more position based. So if you go into big law and you join one of the big law firms, the salaries are lockstep. So if you're a first year lawyer at one of the big firms, you'll be making the same amount as every other first year lawyer. But that starting amount is a higher salary than 99% of every other job you'll get. But those jobs are also very rare. You have to go to a top law school, do really well at your law school, then you can get one of those jobs. But there are tons of other jobs that lawyers can do. And, there's a balance. Sometimes the salary is not, that crazy, but the experience is much better. There's a much better work-life balance, or there's more, some of those jobs have more prestige, it just depends.
Well, I love that, which kind of even perfectly segues right now to your role as in the General Counsel of Aero Technologies. Can you just talk us about what role you play in that right now?
Yeah, no, absolutely. So I am the General Counsel is my title. I'm also the head of People Ops, but that's a sort of a separate department. But the General Counsel of any company, really, there are really like two types of general counsels, right? There is what is you could call the protector type general counsel, and then there's what you could call the problem solver type general counsel. So on the protector side, you're more a general advisor at the top level of the company, right? So you advise the board, you're concerned with setting policy, you're concerned with general compliance, et cetera. Your main job is to keep the company from risk, keep the company from liability, keep the company from legal trouble in general. That's the protector model of being a general counsel. Another type is what I would call like the problem solver type general counsel. Some people call it like the whack-a-mole general counsel, where you're more labor oriented and your role is primarily about solving problems as they come. Because in a growing company, there are, countless unpredictable problems that pop up every single day. Some of them are legal in nature, some of them are business related in nature, and then some of them are things that just people have never seen before, so they go to the lawyer, right? And that version of general counsel is more about prioritizing the labor of solving those problems. That's why they call it the whack-a-mole type general counsel, because like things pop up and you gotta you gotta solve it, or you gotta be the one who uses your lawyer brain to think through the solution with the business teams. So there's the protector and the problem solver. I'm both, and sometimes a GC is both. Sometimes they're one or the other. Because especially with early stage companies that are in, or emerging companies, you never know. Oftentimes, most of the leadership team have multiple skill sets and they wear multiple hats. So sometimes you may not need a problem solver type general counsel, or sometimes you might want to rely more on outside counsel for some of the compliance stuff or the general advising of the board. It really comes down to what works for the teams, but because of my background, because I come from big law, so I have specific experience related to corporate governance and general corporate and financings, et cetera. It just so happens that it makes sense for me to be holding down both roles.
Man, I love this so much. This is such an educational and just an amazing interview. The reason why I like it so much, there's certain entrepreneurs like the Cody Sanchez's that I follow. The reason why I like certain entrepreneurs like that, like yourself, is the fact that you also understand the importance of still educating yourself, having an educational background, and still being in business and leadership as well.
Absolutely.
And I think both can be so complementary, because sometimes if you have like one of each, it can become, it can work against you as well, depending on how the market is and how things work. But the fact that I've always stressed on, because I studied economics as well, and I did internships as well in New York Financial District. But entering the entrepreneurial space, I feel like both can add, because you're using like your legal background, your understanding, your problem solving, and like seeing things from a different lens compared to that, and then having that grit, that hustle of being a business, an entrepreneur, and a leader. I think you're the modern day Iron Man.
Yeah, every entrepreneur is the modern day Iron Man. They may not have the personality of Tony Stark, but that ingenuity, that resourcefulness, every entrepreneur has to be that. Quincy Jones has a quote where he says, every artist The music you make cannot be more or less than what you are.
That's powerful.
Yeah. And that applies to business or anything you create, really. And it's like every successful entrepreneur, they corral all of the experiences that they've had, even from seemingly unrelated aspects of their life, and they apply them to the business. Because, we talked about Steve Jobs. You see that with Steve Jobs. He talked about the inspiration for the design of the first Apple computer coming to him as he was, under a tree on a psychedelic trip. That's seemingly an unrelated experience, but the way his entrepreneurial brain worked is that it grabbed anything that might be a relevant solution and applied it to the task at hand. You know what I mean? And that's what Tony Stark does.
And I want to add on that. And I know we've been jumping on a few things, but now that you brought that up, I have a question that I want to kind of address. We've seen so many things that lack innovation go down and under, like Blockbuster or like Nokia or MySpace. I'm old enough to remember MySpace. You know what I'm saying? All these all these different stuff were not as innovative enough. Like the Apple, I remember Apple, when you're showing Apple phone, like in 2007, 2008, and you start speaking about the touch screen and like people often see a vision beforehand, which kind of segues to my question to you right now. Obviously, yes, all the guests and myself have had a breathtaking experience. However, innovation is very important to continue moving forward. With your experience, Silicon Valley and all that, what are ways that you're implementing innovation to continue to stay ahead of the trends as well?
So I don't want to give away a trade secret, right? Because,
Coke didn't do that. It's been like 50 years.
They're smart. That's why, it's still a good bet to bet on Coke. I will say that we have a very real pathway to integrate some of the, the latest technology necessities, I'll call them, the latest technology necessities into our business model. I talked about how we think of Aura House in general. I call it production as a product. Most people think of a production or a studio as a service-oriented business, and we are service-oriented in that we serve our clients and we listen to our clients and we implement that. But the way we think about this as a scalable business is really as a product. And what I'll say is, we have some thoughts and plans about how to apply technology to make that product more scalable than we've ever seen with any type of a production company.
Okay.
I'll say that. I won't say what the idea is because, someone very quickly might be able to implement it given how technology works now.
AI and all that.
Yeah, now ideas are king. So, there was a time where in Silicon Valley where, the philosophy was that ideas are cool, but they're not as important. What's important is, can you build a team? Can you actually build the technology? And can you implement and execute? That's kind of changed now because anybody can build the technology, and maybe anybody can't build a team, but the idea actually, I think, has a lot more value now. So I'm gonna keep the idea to myself.
Yeah, we'll run a reel in the next 5 years as well, and people will kind of pick up to it. They'll add 2 and 2 together.
Yeah, they're like, oh, that's all right.
That's what he meant.
I'm glad he didn't say it because I would have stole it.
So obviously, you're working in high-stake environments like private aviation and with aero technology. What have you learned about leadership, especially under pressure? Because with your legal background, problem solving is important. But like working under pressure, what have you learned from that?
What have I learned about leadership under pressure? Self-reflection, self-honesty, and particularly when under pressure, don't spill out onto others, right? Start with accountability. We have this saying in my department that pressure doesn't excuse your behavior, it reveals who you are.
Powerful.
So when you're under pressure, a lot of leaders are tempted to treat their teams a certain way or have a much shorter fuse or just become more difficult to work with in general, and they'll excuse that behavior within themselves because they'll say, this is a time of pressure, I need to be this way. But what we say is that pressure is just going to reveal what's already inside you. So work on what's inside you so that when the pressure comes, what comes out is even more useful for the people around you and even more useful for your team. And what happens is there's a compounding effect because your team witnesses you become even better under pressure. And then they want to rise to that occasion and they trust you more. And when they trust you more, they can perform better and the bonds become tighter and closer and everyone moves toward the vision with more vigor.
I love that so much. That's a mic drop right there. Can I just quickly do that? Is that okay? No, and just to add on that, there's I know Damian Lillard once said pressure is a privilege, and I actually heard it previously from a coach. I don't know if you follow European football, soccer. His name was Jose Mourinho. He lost about I think 4 games in a row, but he had won the Champions League with Chelsea. He had an impeccable record and super young. And they asked him like, "Are you under pressure?" And he just took the mic and he said, "Pressure. What is pressure? Pressure is a woman in South America or in Africa who's trying to figure out to pay their bills or trying to like take care of the kids or doesn't have a house to stay in right now. Like, listen, I have all these different stuff and pressure is a privilege. And right now I have the privilege to be able to turn to work tomorrow." I'm obviously paraphrasing, but he kind of like turned that question completely around saying, listen, yeah, every day is an opportunity as well. So I want you to give me advice from your experience, and I've seen how everything runs almost perfectly and smoothly. I was in one interview I kind of stressed on I struggle with wanting to do everything by myself all the time. I want. Not that I don't trust, but I prefer because I know that I can do it. Like I want to do the emails, I want to do the quiz, I want to do this stuff, I want to book the stuff. People are like, what are we doing? And it's like, it's fine, I can do this. But like, what advice would you give for somebody right now in that small business quadrant trying to like delegate but not really delegating?
SOPs, standard operating procedures. Build systems that are standard, that you can rely on, that you can trust, and that are iterable and that can be communicated to other people. And bring on partners that you can trust. Hire people that are talented, hire people that you believe in. And when you combine those two things, what you'll have is a way to perpetuate the vision and keep it intact to a certain degree. You can't keep your way of doing things 100% intact as you expand and as you bring on new people. But if you build standard operating procedures, if you focus on operations, if you drill those systems, if you train yourself and train your teams well, you can make sure that the core, that the most important parts translate as you grow and as you scale. And if you hire good people, then in those moments where the standard operating procedure doesn't apply and you're not there to say, well, this is how I would do it, you can trust that their judgment will be good and many times better than yours, especially if you're hiring people for specific purposes and who have expertise in that area. They should be better than you. They should know better than you. Otherwise, they're probably not the person for that job. So that's what I would say.
No, that's perfect. It's hard sometimes because people can't buy in the same vision that you have, you know what I'm saying? And you're passionate, like, you and Adrian may have like Aura House the way it is and other businesses as well, but trying to get people to see what you see, like what you've done, what Steve Jobs has done, what Tesla, Elon, like people buying into that. Like what would you say is the way people can buy into something?
Yeah, I hear you. So I used to think of leadership as the act of motivating people to get on board with your vision, right? And now I think of it more as the act of discovering the vision that aligns with the people who believe in that vision but maybe can't see it, right? So we all have this idea of where we should end up or where something should end up. We have this idea of where the world should be, how the world should look, right? That's the vision. That's the ultimate destination. There are people out there who, if they could see it, they would agree. That is where we should end up, right? So I think of leadership as being the person who sees it, and now your job is to find the other people who, once you show it to them, they agree. Not motivating them once they see it to agree, to just show it to them. And if you can effectively, as a leader, show people the vision, the people who agree with that vision, they'll get on board and they'll align.
Powerful.
Yeah.
Because most of the time, that's what I would do. Some people would do. It's like, listen, this is good, right?
Yeah.
And it's like, yeah, it's good. But it's like, they
just don't get it.
They don't get it.
They don't get it.
Yeah.
And that's the hard part, is knowing whether this is a person who sees it and just doesn't get it, or if I'm not doing a good job of making sure they see it, right? Because as a leader, that's your main job, is to demonstrate the vision. So if you're not doing that as a first step, then you don't know whether it's you or whether it's them.
Okay. And then another advice for someone out there, not just me, but people that are small business owners, you've seen a lot, especially some of the black startups in the Silicon Valley as well. What is the biggest mistake some of them did that kind of led to like their downfall that people can avoid today?
I think one of the mistakes that I see very often is people grow too fast. People want to scale too quickly. People want to raise money right away, and they think of the act of raising money as the accomplishment. You know, I've raised $10 million of someone else's money, and now I have to actually deliver on that. And, you know, they get these valuations that don't match the actual value of the company, and then there's a market reset, and then they have to do a down round, and now they look like poison to other investors because they have a track record of losing people money on paper. And a lot of that has to do with wanting to appear to be a successful entrepreneur and getting into, and this is not just for Black entrepreneurs, this is entrepreneurs in general, wanting to be seen as someone doing something and wanting the accolades and wanting the public applause, as opposed to wanting to build something that is of value for the world. You know what I mean? And I think that's what happens. And, you know, the universe is always going to balance things out. So when something is out of proportion in one direction, there will be a correction. And I think that's what comes back and, you know, knocks people off their pivot.
That's powerful, man. Let's start getting into the questions, right? Like, let's
do
it. How has being part of Aerospace Leadership shaped the way you think about building startups and navigating and scaling challenges?
So being a part of leadership at Aero has taught me so much. First of all, my mentor at the company is the CEO, and this is a guy who, he's also an attorney. He was the GC when I joined the company, and now he's the CEO, and he's also a pilot. So he's an attorney, he's a pilot, and he's the CEO of the company. And he's also a guy who leads through humility and curiosity. He's extremely intelligent and cerebral, but that becomes clear to you through the work, right? As you're working with him, you recognize that, you know, he has his eye on all of the little details, but he comes across with so much humility that he just feels like someone working together with you. And I've learned a lot about leadership from that experience. And I think that's one of the core components of building a company in general. You know, it's not about the hierarchy. It's more about the relationship between the people who are really there to do the work and who believe in the ultimate vision. You know?
And I couldn't agree more. Thank you for sharing that. And with mentorship, I think it's just so important. It's such an underrated thing, because usually you get people that help you overcome a certain obstacle that they faced, and they can help you prevent it as well. And how important is, as apart from that, have you had any other mentors that have helped you along the way as well?
In life?
Yes.
Oh man, I give credit to so many people, you know.
Is there one specific that sticks out to you as well that you might want
to
share?
I'll go through the list, you know.
Let's go.
My mom gave me the ability to believe in the impossible. My grandfather gave me discipline, and my father gave me talent. You know, there's a guy named Andrew Woods he's my first mentor. When someone asks about a mentor, he's usually the person I say. And from the time I was, 11 years old, he put me in leadership positions to lead organizations within my community, to, have meetings with the mayor and, travel the nation. So he was one of the first people to give me purpose. My other mentor is me. I've always had a voice inside me that gives me spontaneous epiphanies, that holds me accountable, that, makes me feel guilty when I do things wrong, that, commands me to apologize when I feel like I've done something wrong to someone, that hands me solutions to problems that I didn't even know were problems yet. And I'm forever grateful for that voice. And then, of course, God gave me everything. So he's the ultimate mentor. But I think that I'm mentored by so many people, and I'm appreciative.
And I mean, you have amazing businesses. You You're very experienced, very learned and intelligent. You've been around in terms of like in the legal space and investing, raising up, starting a business, wonderful business partner and wife. What is your why? What keeps you going?
That's a good question. Earlier, I alluded to the fact that I tie message to purpose. And a few years back, I retired from the practice of law, and I went on a little bit of a spiritual journey because I needed to discover my purpose. I was burnt out from practicing. And I think what I found is that creation of a message that represents you and perpetuating that into the world is the ultimate purpose. That and building a family and perpetuating your actual DNA, and I think that continues to be my why. And all of the spheres that we've talked about and things that have been a part of who I am for my entire life, from art to business to practicing law, it translates into all of those different sectors. It's about figuring out what my honest message is and continuing to push it out as far and as wide and as deeply as I possibly can, because I won't be here forever, and there will be a time when all of the people who know me or who have ever known me, they're also not here. So what will be left is the message that I hope will be useful to the people that still exist at that time.
Wow. Man, I came for an interview, not a motivational speech. That's amazing.
My bad, man. Amazing. It's the coffee. It's the coffee.
Oh, I really, really enjoyed this interview. I don't know even how you could possibly even answer the last one, because it's been amazing. And I think it's going to be very educational, very enlightening, I hope many people can relate as much as possible by seeing how you've navigated your way and finding purpose and pleasure in that as well. Because the most important thing is not just going to work and doing what you do, but just finding a passion. And passion is shown by work and design as well. And this has been a great experience for me. Really appreciate you and Adrian for that. Thank you so much for that. I want to thank you
for having me, man. Thank you for having me.
And then the last question, though. So I don't know how you're going to top it up, because you've gave great answers, so no pressure.
Okay.
The code to winning is, I've always loved the term winning, because it means different things to different people, but every single person has just answered it differently, and I've really appreciated that, because that's one of the things I'll look at every time towards and to kind of keep me going, what winning is. For Khiree Walker-Smith, what is your definition of winning?
How do I define winning? I think winning is finding the balance between accomplishment and acceptance, right? Those are the two sides of the equation. I think on one hand, if all you care about is accomplishment, everything you accomplish, you'll just want more. And you'll never find happiness, you'll never find success, you'll never find contentment, and that can't be said to be winning, right? On the other hand, if all you have is acceptance and you just accept any and everything, you will feel like you have no will in the world. You will feel like there's no reason for your existence, because you're just subject to the whims of the wind and the variables. So there has to be a balance between both. There has to be these things you want to accomplish to a certain extent, and a healthy ability to accept things as they are. And if you can find that balance, then you've won.
Powerful. If you could let our viewers know where they could get a hold of you if they want to try and rent a studio or work with production or any other stuff that you do, let our viewers know. We'll put it in the description section as well below.
Absolutely. You can follow me on Instagram at Khiree_ESQ. That's KHIREE_ESQ. You can check Aura House out at our website, aurahouseclub.com, or if you want to reach out to us directly, you can send us an email, info@aurahouseclub.com.
Awesome stuff. The code to winning insights you need today to seize the world tomorrow. Khiree Walker-Smith. Thank you very much.
Here we go. Thank you, brother. All right.